Welcome back, MTG Burgeoning community and YouTube viewing audience. If you're still part of the latter and haven't joined the former, click the subscribe button now. When you do, you will become eligible for this channel's rewards series, all of which you can peruse in the description below. It's Top 10s Day Wednesday, and in today's video, we're going to rank Magic's 10 guilds. What's the best guild in Magic the Gathering? What's the most powerful guild? What's the most popular guild? What's the least popular? Hard questions to answer. What's your favorite guild? Easy question to answer. Or so I thought. How do players determine their favorite guilds? My theory, players construct and play with decks that they like, so a player's favorite two-color combination is deciphered easily by examining their collection of decks. Therefore, I decided to answer this question following the premise that whichever two-color combination was most represented throughout my archive of decks must be my favorite guild. This list of guilds is based on their presence in my archive of decks. This number is north of 100, so it should be a reliable sample size, thereby negating any potential barnyard effects. There were 3 instances in which tiebreakers were needed to determine ranks in the middle of the list. The cumulative total of guild color pairs in my archive of decks, consisting of at least 3 colors, was used as a tiebreaker. For example, in a Temur deck, Izzet, Simic, and Gruul are represented and, therefore, would be added to their respective guild total in order to break a tie. Prior to compiling these statistics, I tried to predict each guild's rank. How accurate were these predictions? Let's find out and begin this Top 10s Day Wednesday list. Number 10 is the Azorius Guild. As predicted, the Azorius Guild is the least represented build in my catalog of decks. The primary deck-building archetype in Azorius is Control and Permission, types of decks I avoid generally. As the lowest-ranked guild with the fewest guild decks overall, my Azorius decks consist of tribal builds with sphinxes and birds, in addition to an aggro deck featuring Geist of St. Traft and Ascended Lawmage, paired with Steel of the Godhead and Invocation of St. Traft. The Azorius Sphinx deck was showcased in the Kitchen Table series, episode number 156. Currently, I see no Azorius builds on the horizon, and I expect this guild to remain at the bottom of this list for a while. Number 9 is the Selesnya Guild. This ranking is a surprise to me because I love creating tokens, which is one of Selesnya's primary deck-building archetypes. However, I only have one Selesnya token deck in my archive, a fact I had to confirm 3 times. Apparently, my focus tends to lean on auras and lands in my Selesnya builds, as I play with Bogles in addition to a Bogle variant. Also, my Selesnya lands deck was featured in the Kitchen Table series, episode number 176. It is a mystery why the number of Selesnya token decks is so low. I will heighten my awareness to this anomaly in the future. Number 8 is the Orzhov Guild. Now this rank is shocking, as evidenced by my earlier predictions. Orzhov has a lot of various deck-building archetypes ranging from sacrifice and drain life decks to token themes. Orzhov also has had a lot of tribal support recently in the form of vampires, zombies, and clerics. However, my only Orzhov tribal deck is a spirit build. Apparently, Orzhov's primary deck-building archetypes are represented across my catalog of decks, just not very frequently. An aristocrat-style sacrifice deck was illustrated in the Kitchen Table series, episode number 181. Perhaps recent Orzhov additions such as Lisa, Shroud of Dusk, and General Kudro of Drannith will inspire some new Orzhov builds in the future. Number 7 is the Simic Guild. I was not sure where the Simic Guild would rank prior to compiling this list, so I can't say I'm surprised or disappointed by its showing. There are a lot of deck-building archetypes in this guild, and each Simic deck in my archive is representative of this variance. Tim Tappers, cheating big creatures into play, and +1/+1 counters are prevalent in my catalog of decks. In episode number 98, I showcased a modern Simic Merfolk deck. Additionally, an old-school Simic Flashback deck was featured in the Kitchen Table series, episode number 196. These distinctive Simic decks highlight the guild's versatility, reinforcing its power and popularity throughout the player base. Upon review, Simic's rank feels slightly lower than it should be, but my disdain for playing counter magic may be anchoring it to its number 7 rank. Number 6 is the Gruul Guild. This is another shocking rank. My preferred path to victory is turning massive, hasty, and trampling creatures sideways in order to vanquish my opponents. This theme runs rampant throughout my various Gruul builds, but the decks are not as prevalent as I believed initially. The presence of dragons, squirrels, Xenagos, God of Rebels, and even a dedicated trample deck highlights the Gruul's Guild representation in my catalog of decks. A Gruul Warp World deck was showcased in the Kitchen Table series, episode number 171. I would have lost all wagers against Gruul being ranked in the top 3 of this list, just one of my many eye-opening conclusions drawn from the compilation of this list. Number 5 is the Golgari Guild. The Golgari Guild's rank is higher than I expected. Like all guilds, Golgari has its specialties, generally focusing on the graveyard and graveyard shenanigans. These concepts are represented in a Spider Tribal deck and a Golgari Garruk deck, which was displayed in a Kitchen Table series video, episode number 204. Recent sets such as Dominaria and Throne of Eldraine have expanded Golgari's presence in my archive, as Saproling tokens and Golgari food builds are recent additions to the catalog. My oldest Golgari deck is a Wither build, first conceptualized after the release of Shadowmoor back in 2008. The deck received some additional support when Amonkhet and Hour and Devastation released back in 2017. Number 4 is the Izzet Guild. Izzet's rank is as shocking to me as Orzhov's rank, but for a different reason. I predicted that Izzet would be ranked somewhere near the bottom of this list. Its presence as number 4 is jaw-dropping to me, but the decks do not lie. I prefer to cast creature spells, or so I thought. However, with so many spell-slinging Izzet decks crowding the top of this list, I may be forced to rethink my Magic the Gathering predilections. Although I boast an Izzet 7 Dwarves deck, its presence is lost in a storm of spell decks featuring enchantments, Delver, and a spell deck constructed around Pyromancer's Ascension. An Izzet coin flip deck was showcased in the Kitchen Table series, episode number 191. I suppose there's more to my deck building ways than merely summoning creatures. Number 3 is the Dimir Guild. The Dimir Guild was going to be the wildcard guild of this list. Typically, control is a favorite archetype of the Dimir Guild. As mentioned earlier during the description for the Azorius Guild, I tend to avoid building control decks. Or so I thought. Nearly all of my Dimir decks try to control the board. Granted, there are some zombie and army decks floating around the halls of the Dimir. However, this guild is dominated by Mill, Torpor Orb, and Lockout decks. Even the deck featured in the Kitchen Table series, episode number 161, Dimir Megrim Caress, is a control deck. The presence of Izzet and Dimir in the top 4 of this list is mind-bending for a player that previously believed he favored creatures as his primary avenue to victory. Hashtag eyes wide open. Number 2 is the Boros Guild. Now we're talking. Attack with creatures, then attack with more creatures, and then attack with even more creatures. The Boros Guild was created for combat, and that facet is staunchly represented in nearly all of my Boros Guild builds. Humans, tokens, enchantments, and equipment dominate the deck-building landscape of my Boros builds. Even my Feather the Redeemed EDH Commander deck has splashes of true Boros stroked into its art. An Avacyn the Purifier build utilizes creatures with protection from red in order to wipe the board and win via combat. Interestingly, however, that from all of these true Boros builds, an infinite combo deck featuring Enduring Renewal was depicted in the Kitchen Table series, episode number 186, and not one of these true-to-heart white-red combat builds. Curiouser and curiouser. And number 1 is the Rakdos Guild. Apparently, Rakdos is my favorite guild as demonstrated by my deck construction preferences, and it wasn't even close. Rakdos decks outnumbered Boros and Dimir decks nearly 2-to-1 in my collection. I never saw it coming, but I probably should have, honestly. When I became a part of the Magic the Gathering community back in 1997, my first deck was a black-red Fiery Doom deck, which featured Scavenging Ghouls, Sadistic Glee, and as many spells that destroyed my opponent's creatures as possible. You always remember your first love, right? Since that time, Rakdos has expanded its presence in my catalog by including various tribal builds such as vampires, pirates, goblins, elementals, and a Minotaur deck was highlighted in the Kitchen Table series, episode number 166. Additionally, spell-slinging decks are very evident. A Mind Crank Infinite Combo deck, a Political Puppet deck, as well as a deck featuring the Madness mechanic. There are those spell-slinger decks again. Lastly, the black-red color combination of Rakdos is the most represented 2-color combination across all my decks that have at least 3 colors. The stunning results of this list has challenged my previous deck-building convictions. There is a greater presence of spell-slinging and/or control decks at the top half of this list, of which I was unaware previously. This defies my earlier perceptions of my preferred Magic the Gathering deck-building archetypes. This was quite an enlightening journey. And that's the way the news goes. Burgeonites, what is your favorite guild? More importantly, how do you determine which guild is your favorite? Let me know in the comment section below, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons on your way out. This is MTG Burgeoning. Go forth and enjoy yourselves and each other.